This video is Willie's. Is it time to go back? Classic, fresh, classic. Wow. Let's take a look.
Every 18 months or so, there is a natural phenomenon that occurs worldwide for vanilla World of Warcraft enjoyers. A migration of sorts, but not a migration north, east, south, or west. This is a migration back in time, because pretty much whatever version of World of Warcraft, or indeed whatever game is out at the moment, they're gonna start to get that feeling that they want to go back to where it all began, back to vanilla. We have replayed the original trilogy at this point in time, and whilst each game certainly has their good and not so good parts, it is hard to match up to the original flavour, and to the allure of a brand new server and a start where everyone is on the same footing. So today I'm going to be talking about what's currently going on in the classic scene in regards to Fresh.
Do you guys think that, so that itch he's talking about is very real? It's like you have a classic fresh, it's very exciting, it's very fun, and then after a certain amount of time, it gets stale, gold buyers, you know, you clear the content, people quit, whatever, and then after a certain amount of time, you get that itch again, right? You get that itch again to play. I actually have that itch for hardcore right now, man. But do you guys think it's an 18-month window? For me, I've hypothesized in the past, it's closer to like 3 or 4 years, right? Like you have the Nostalria's hype in 2016, you have 2019 classic WoW, and then you have like 2023 hardcore blow up. It's like it seems like every 3 or 4 years, there's like a massive movement of like, let's just go big. You know, for Payo, it's every 3 weeks. Yeah, true. So I guess it depends on what you mean, because there's some players that would play classic WoW probably like once every year, like a Payo, right? Like someone who just would like love to play on a fresh realm like every 6 months, right? It's like, okay, a fresh into another fresh to another fresh. But I feel like for the majority of people, every couple of years you start getting that itch, and it's like, all right, let's go back. And if it's too soon, then it's like just whatever, right?
And how you could join this movement now if that is something that you have been thinking about doing, and ultimately why this has happened now and where it's likely to lead. With all that said though, let's make a start. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Elder Scrolls Online. Elder Scrolls Online just had its most recent major content update, the Gold Road, adding in hours of story content to its already expansive universe and tons of new features. The new zone, the West Weald, is a throwback to Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and includes areas such as the Gold Road, Dawnwood.
Bro, I loved Oblivion so much. I played the heck out of that game. I played Oblivion on my Xbox. That's before I had before I was like a super big PC gamer, and I got these like when you close the gates of hell or whatever they were called, the Inferno gates or whatever they were called, I could get these little like shards that that you enchant your gear, and it would give you 20% invulnerability or 20% invisibility. But what you could do is you could stack them. You could get 5 of them, so you could get 100% invisibility or 100% invulnerability. So I made my character. I had two different characters. One was 100% invisible, and one was 100% invincible. And then I broke the game. And then I ended up quitting because it wasn't fun anymore. But that was super late game. I loved Oblivion for a very long time.
Wildburn and the Colovian Highlands. This new zone offers a variety of new content from characters, challenges, delves, public dungeons, world events, and more. Gold Road features a brand new gameplay system too called scribing. This allows players to gather and customize magical skill through grimoires, which can be used to further modify existing skill lines. The new story arc features the return of a mysterious Daedric prince, Ithelia, who is bent upon unleashing chaos upon Tamriel, and there is a new 12-player trial too, the Lucent Citadel, for the PvE enjoyers. There'll be all this and tons more to explore, so click the link below and check out Elder Scrolls Online and the Gold Road update, as well as all of its features today. Many thanks.
That actually looks pretty good.
Thanks to Elder Scrolls Online for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. So at this point, it's been near enough 5 years since Blizzard did their own World of Warcraft Classic release, back around September of 2019. And though Vanilla's never really gone away, as TBC and Wrath of the Lich King have, it's never reset either. It's never strictly just been a no changes fresh. We've had Classic era since we moved to TBC, that's gained a fair bit of popularity and has a stable population, and Blizzard have tried adding a bunch of different toppings to the vanilla flavor from other game game modes from Hardcore, Season of Mastery, and the ongoing
Season of Mastery, in my eyes, was basically fresh. Am I wrong on that? Like, Season of Mastery had a few changes, but, like, not many. Like, not many. Season of Mastery was essentially like a fresh realm. But in my eyes, it was done a little too soon. So, like, nobody played it. Like, some people did. Like the Payos and stuff. But it basically was a fresh, and it was too close to the 2019 launch, at least in my eyes, that, like, everyone was like, no, I just did that. So I don't want to play again. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the timeline was about a year after. Like, it was like 2020, I think. Maybe a little bit later. And that was too short. Going back to my hypothesis, I think it's closer to like 3 or 4 years where that itch is truly there. That's when Hardcore launched and SOD launched. And those seem to take off a lot more than SOM.
Season of Discovery, but typically the vanilla people keep coming back for is kind of none of the above. It's the fresh option, and fresh has been the vehicle that's been getting people back into this game again and again for well over a decade now. And though Blizzard has not jumped on this bandwagon to actively provide fresh, the players have said, fine, we'll do it ourselves. And there have been 2 servers that have been picked for this.
I think if Blizzard were to do fresh, you'd have to make some decisions. 1, how often would Blizzard do fresh realms? And then 2, after a while, what would you do with all of those realms? Right? So say Blizzard once every 18 months did a fresh realm on Classic WoW, and then every few years they did a massive merger between all the dead realms, because you can't just keep adding realms forever, because then you're going to have a bunch of dead realms. So you would need to, if you're going to add realms, you have to also figure out how to remove realms, right? Or else you're going to end up with bloat. That's kind of how that works. So it's like, you have to solve those 2 problems. How often do we add realms, and how often do we actually remove realms so there's no bloated, we don't get into this like bloated situation with a bunch of dead servers. If they solve those 2 problems or came up with like a good game plan, I think that would actually maybe be a decent idea. Like, okay, every 18 months, you guys get a brand new fresh realm for the people that want that. And every time we add in a new realm, we're going to merge one of the old ones back together so that we don't get a bloated realm list over time. Something like that.
Fresh movement. You have Deviate Delight on North America and Zandalar Tribe on EU. Note that these are RP PvP servers as well, so you better be at least a little bit into world PvP.
Bro, RP is like the best realms to go on in Classic WoW. Like, the whole appeal to Classic is like, when you walk up to someone, you're like, hello there, and like have them respond and like have this conversation and then work together for a common goal, you know? Like, that was one of the things that made Bloodsail Buccaneers such a fun realm in original Hardcore before the official Hardcore realms, like the unofficial Hardcore Bloodsail. It's just so fun, man. Like this realm right here, actually, in the video, Bloodsail Buccaneers RP. It's really good.
Equally worth a mention while we're here is that Hardcore has also started up again as well. That will be on Defias Pillager on North America and Stitches on EU. For Era though, there's a reason that Deviate Delight and Zandalar Tribe were picked. It's specifically because they are RP realms. Now, I'm not saying everyone going back to these servers is going there for RP, but you may see it a little more often than what you're used to. You see, back when Classic Era was made, when we were moving into TBC, what happened eventually is that all the PvP servers and all the PvE servers were bundled into these server clusters where you were playing with people across all those different realms.
Maybe I'm missing something here. I probably am missing something here from like the technological side of things, but for me as a player, this is a little confusing, to be honest, that the fact that there's like 100 realms and then there's server clusters with all of these realms that are connected feels confusing as a player, right? I don't understand the technicality of things, but to me, it would be way easier to just combine all these servers into one server called Westfall, into one server called like Azure Song. And then you just have like 5 servers. When you choose to make a character, you have like 5 realms, and they're all good choices because there's only 5, so they're all popping, versus having like 50 servers that are all like clustered, and like it's just so confusing. Now, the technological limitations are probably something like, well, people have the same names. There's guilds with the same names. There's maybe things that make that more difficult than just like snapping your fingers and doing it. So that's probably why they haven't done it. And the cluster solution was probably a lot easier. But as a player, it's a bit confusing.
kind of like what you see in retail where there's people from different realms everywhere, but this had to happen as back when this decision was made, the population of Classic Era was not looking too good, and ultimately this has been a good thing in the long run. This did not happen to RP servers because there was nothing to bundle RP servers with. If you were there for the RP, you couldn't just be put together with a PvP server because essentially that's a different type of server, and Blizzard have stuck to their guns on that, so good for them, and ultimately it's led to us being able to use those servers now to stimulate a fresh.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but RP realms also don't have layering? I remember that was one of the reasons people used Bloodsail Buccaneers to play hardcore on, because there wasn't like layering, like spam layers. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's incorrect info. Maybe it was like that and they changed it. One layer only, they don't. I don't know if that's changed, if that's old info, but I do remember that that was one of the big deciding factors for playing on RP realms for us, is because you only have one layer, which owns for an MMO. Like, I always use the classic example of like you're friends with like Jimmy at school and you're like, all right, Jimmy, I'll meet you in Westfall after class. And like you log in WoW and you're on the same realm and you both log in and you both go to Westfall after class and Jimmy's not there. And you're like, damn it, Jimmy, where are you, bud? And you're just on two different layers in the same spot on the same realm. Ugh, that's super bad for an MMO. If you're in the same spot on the same realm, you got to see that other player. That's why I'm super anti-layering. The only time I think layering is appropriate for an MMO is on like launch day or launch week, when there's like 10x the amount of normal players on like a launch. Everyone's playing. It's like, sure, spin up 10 layers so everyone can play the game for the first week or two. But like, we got to get back down to one layer as quick as possible, right?
This more or less meant that these servers were 99.9% dead, and the chance that level 60 copied characters from Era still existed on them was pretty low. And I'd say the fresh movement is still relatively small at the moment, but it's definitely growing. At one point in time, Classic Era was pretty small, and it's been healthy for a good amount of time now. People have to start back out somewhere, after all. And it's more than just for the nostalgia, I'd say as well. That fresh feeling is genuinely just a great, timeless gameplay loop. And if this whole thing was just nostalgia, it would have run out of steam a long time ago. We're here 5 years after Blizzard's official vanilla release, and who knows.
I mean, I think a lot of it is based on nostalgia. The question isn't whether or not it's fully nostalgia, because it's definitely not fully nostalgia. Obviously, it's a good game too. It's like, well, how much nostalgia is it versus how much is it a good gameplay loop? And I would probably say it's a mix of both. But I think completely disregarding the nostalgia component is just silly, because that's certainly a large component, and it's an important one, and it's a good one, and there's no reason to downplay it. It's part of it, but it's not all of it.
However many other servers have released their own vanilla fresh over the years. So why is this happening now though? Why is now the time for fresh? Do you remember when Ulduar came out in Wrath Classic, and at the same time Classic Era started growing? And a lot of people said, it might be because the raiding's starting to get a bit difficult, and that's ultimately not what people are looking for. Well, at the moment we have Cataclysm, which I can only assume has been a catalyst for this movement, as it represents the most sweeping changes this game has seen so far, from gameplay systems, raid difficulty, and of course the updating of the entire old world. And you know the craziest thing about this whole vanilla fresh thing happening now? It's happening during a seasonal server for World of Warcraft, Season of Discovery. If that doesn't kind of tell you that Blizzard might have gone a bit too far to alienate the original vanilla players, then I don't know what does. But at this point in time, Season of Discovery is very much its own thing, and I'll need to do a review on that when all is said and done. For real though, I think this movement could have even begun midway through Wrath, and Wrath has overall surprised a lot of people with how...
Well, it didn't, because hardcore was going on midway through Wrath, right? Or like around that time. It probably would have if hardcore didn't, because people were itching, but I think hardcore took the itch because it's essentially it was a fresh realm, because it's hardcore. It's a fresh character until you die, then you start fresh again. But yeah, exactly.
far it took the game from its original format. And in retrospect to the Lich King, well, existing in that expansion kind of carried it pretty hard for a lot of people and kept it true enough to that original trilogy feeling. And I'm sure in a few years time we're going to start seeing posts online of people saying, man, I miss Wrath of the Lich King. It's happening with TBC at the moment. Over the past few months there's been a huge amount of posts cropping up about people missing that version of the game. And it's just like what happened with Classic Era initially. When it first releases, it's completely dead because we've just played the game, we're not going to go straight back to it again, but you give it some time that goes by and it turns out that people will want it back eventually.
That's why, like, I've had this discussion so many times, but it's like, if you're going to keep one WoW, why would it not be Wrath? Like, people love Wrath. Sorry, like if you're gonna, so you would obviously keep Classic Era because it's already there, but if you're gonna keep another one, why would you move to Kata and then keep Kata around, or why would you move to Mop and keep Mop around? Like, it seems like Wrath was the natural stopping point that a lot of players would have just loved to play forever. Whereas if you move Classic through Wrath, through Kata, through Mop, do you end at Mop? Do you go to WoD? Do you end at WoD? Do you go to Legion? Like, do you end at Legion? Do you go to, you see what I'm saying? It's like, I think Wrath would have been a really natural stopping point. But now that we've gone to Kata and then maybe to Mop, it's like, where do you stop? And then how do you stop? And then where, like, it's just, ooh, it's a tricky thing, right? And if you're going to keep something forever, it seems like Wrath would be the one. In terms of TBC, this might be a shocker to you guys. Maybe not, but I don't desire to play TBC again. I played in, what was it, 2021? I played in 2006 as well. I enjoyed both times. I have zero interest in playing TBC again, at least right now. I do have interest in playing hardcore again. I do have somewhat of an interest to play fresh, like, era again. I wouldn't have much interest to play TBC, at least right now. I already played it twice. You know what I mean?
So how is this Fresh thing working then? Well, the community-made Fresh servers that I mentioned earlier are stimulating how a new server release would go, and at least content pacing-wise, they're delaying a bit between each major tier, so each phase has some time to breathe. And Blizzard are very much aware this is going on, you know. They even stopped transfers to these servers from other era realms to prevent fully Nax-geared players with thousands of gold disrupting the natural flow on these effectively Fresh realms. Then again, pretty much every Fresh ever starts hype right at the beginning and up until the first few weeks of Molten Core, and then it tends to be a few weeks into Blackwing Lair. Pretty much everyone who is there for the hype up period at the start tends to gradually drift off, and you're left with the real vanilla enthusiasts for AQ40 and Naxxramas. It kind of goes to show with vanilla, the leveling bit and the pre-bis bit is great and is ultimately pretty timeless, but the end game tends to see a bit of a drop off.
I appreciate the honesty. I feel like no one wants to be the one to say that, but it's the truth. The best part of Classic is the leveling. When you hit 60, it is fun to get your epic mount, to grind dungeons, to, you know, get into your first raid and clear Onyxia, do Molten Core, kill Ragnaros, and then right around when Blackwing Lair starts, it's like, okay, and then you see that fall off. That, I mean, that's the truth. I appreciate the honesty from Willie here. Like, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And like, so speeding through those parts of the game is like a big mistake, because that's like that's the good part.
Maybe this isn't just vanilla though, these are just MMOs in general. Whenever do we not see a new release these days which is super hype, and then you wait a few weeks and the player base is halved? Maybe that's just how things are and we can't avoid it. And that vanilla endgame does demand quite a bit of time to be invested. You need to go and farm gold to get your consumables, you need to go and collect your world buffs, which most people will get even if they don't really want to. There's very much an established class meta. If you want to do damage, I hope you picked warrior. And of course, there's the prospect of ranking again, and I'm not too sure if Battlegrounds are going to be starting other than holiday weekends at the moment. So this Fresh thing happens, and it inevitably repeats some 18 months or so later. So the thing is, why isn't Blizzard getting involved? Why aren't they answering the call of Fresh and making these servers a reality themselves? Well, they did block transfers to the community project servers for this Fresh project. One thing I do have to comment on though is timing. If Blizzard came along and released fresh, it's only going to be fresh for a relatively short period of time. One thing I hope that was learned from Season of Mastery is timing is pretty critical.
Yep, I'm glad he's touching on this point too. Season of Mastery was just too early, right? Like, it was just too early. It was right when TBC was going on, I believe, and you know, there were some people that were excited about it, but for the most part, most people skipped it. And yeah, like, that timing component is critical, man.
We have Phase 4 of Season of Discovery in about a week from now. We have Cataclysm out, which is going along. We'll probably see Firelands pretty soon. And there's even the War Within afterwards. Fresh vanilla now really has to be for the people who are gonna drop everything for a fresh. Not for the people who would try it out if there's not really that much going on at the moment. And at the moment, there is a lot going on, I would say. And if Blizzard decide the dates, they kind of have to compete with their own games. In fact, if Blizzard did release Fresh now, I guarantee you people would say, why are you doing it now? This timing is terrible. Whereas a community-driven fresh can really just be whenever enough people agree on it. And if you want in, word of mouth usually does enough to get a decent population in there. It's a similar deal with hardcore, except hardcore is generally a bit more solo play friendly due to the nature of the challenge, so there wouldn't really be a point doing fresh hardcore realms. As for not putting out new fresh era servers, I don't think it's cost related. There were over 24 classic era realms collecting dust for well over a year before people
That's what I'm saying, like, merge all of these realms into like just the top 5 or whatever. I think that would be a really good idea.
Started going back to them. I'd assume costs start happening the more people are on the servers, not just purely the existence of the servers. Maybe Blizzard thinks fresh is risky. I mean, Classic Era took ages to get going again, but then again, vanilla has proven itself the most timeless version of WoW. Or perhaps it's just not as simple as we're all making it out to be. Imagine if they wanted to do Era Realms for TBC or Wrath. Each game would need a different client installed and would need to have its own place on the Battle.net launcher. We already have WoW Classic with all its different...
If I could have one version of WoW for the rest of time, hands down it's vanilla, right? Hands down. Like, if one version of WoW for the rest of my life, it's like, if I'm gonna replay it, it's vanilla, man. It's vanilla for sure. It's vanilla. So, like, yeah,
versions and kata and retail on there. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't have a TBC or Wrath section on there as well, but it just might look a bit messy, perhaps.
Yeah, you don't want that.
In any event, the servers we have at the moment stimulating that fresh experience may not be truly fresh, but I think a community movement to make them happen, at least right now at this point in time, is ultimately the best thing for them. And for me, the main issue I'd have is simply the point in time that they've chosen for these servers to take back off. Ultimately, fresh isn't fresh for too long, and there is quite a lot of other things going on in the Warcraft universe. But if one fresh movement's happened now, I'm sure there will be another in the future at some point in time. So is this whole fresh cycle just going to go on forever on Classic Era realms? I mean, it may well do if Blizzard doesn't provide anything which is actually new. And we've seen with vanilla and different versions of World of Warcraft that after enough time passes, people just want to go back and play those games again with a clean slate to see how the classes played at that point in time, the raids, and just to be part of the world which existed back then. Almost like a little bit of a time capsule. People have been playing World of Warcraft for near enough 2 decades and vanilla for about the same amount of time, so I don't think the idea behind enjoying fresh is going anywhere anytime soon. I only think the mysterious Classic Plus could really disrupt the cycle, but maybe we're getting another seasonal server after Discovery. We'll have to wait and see. But if you have been feeling that feel for some good old vanilla once again, it's Deviate Delight North America or Zandalar Tribe EU, and for Hardcore, Defias Pillager North America and Stitches for EU. Those are
the hardcore realm. Actually, like, I was watching Aussie Falls, and like, it looks kind of poppin' too. Like, hardcore look on Defias Pillager. I can't speak for Stitches, but it seems like there's more and more and more people playing, which is pretty dope. I've got to be honest. It sounds really fun to play TV at Delight. It sounds really fun. But SOD comes out in 2 days, and I want to play. Like, I know I'm gonna be playing SOD. And I do not feel like playing TV to Light for 2 days and then playing SOD. So I'm not going to play, despite it sounding fun. You know, it does sound fun to make a character there and play up and whatever, but P4 is in 2 days. And I know I'm going to play P4. So I don't want to just get to level 15 or 20 and then quit. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm not going to be playing, at least for right now. Maybe some point in the future.
Are your servers. If that's something you want to do, they're going to be more active now than they will be in a while. Maybe Blizzard will answer the call one day and do their own version of Vanilla Fresh. But if you've been wanting to go back, then those are your choices for Vanilla. Let me know if you've been trying out the Fresh servers, whether you've been thinking about going back to them at all, and do you think Blizzard should invest the time in putting out their own Fresh servers, or some kind of servers on a rotation? It doesn't even just have to be for Vanilla, it could be Vanilla through Wrath of the Lich King, for example. Anyways, let me know in the comments down below. And thanks once again to Elder Scrolls Online for sponsoring the video today. You'll be able to find the links for them below as well. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
To me, I think the biggest problem on Blizzard's hand is the fragmentation of the player base, and the biggest thing they have to solve is what can they remove to get players back together, and what can they remove to simplify their product and their experience, you know, as a game. And it's like you can add value through subtraction, right? Bruce Lee has a quote that I'm gonna like misquote, but it's like you add through removing. It's like, what can we remove? What's not completely essential here, let's get rid of it. What's not completely essential here, let's get rid of it. And you just keep removing until you have that essential piece back. I think Blizzard is in the point of time, 20 years in now, where it's like there's so much going on, and so many servers and so much bloat. It's like, let's figure out what we can do to remove and get this back to, you know, the point. And I think one of the things that would help, like wouldn't solve it, but like Classic Era, 100 realms or whatever. Okay, let's get Classic Era to 5 realms, right? 5 realms that are popping. And let's get on a rotation of like maybe adding and subtracting realms so that we can get on something that's very renewable. Okay, what about you know, retail in that same regard? Like simplification is probably what they need to focus on now, right? Instead of just add. It's time to subtract, right? Do you think WoW 2, where it combines modern mechanics and scratches the fresh itch, would bring the player base back together? No, I think it would do the opposite. I think if they made WoW 2, it would be the opposite of that. Because then you would have retail, because you wouldn't just end retail. Then you would have Classic Era, because you wouldn't just end Classic Era, and you would have WoW 2. And you would have Kata. It would just be another version of WoW. It'd be more of a split. It would be more of a split to do that. Yo, Will, thanks for the tier 1. But you would end retail? Yeah. I don't know about that. I think ending retail... So, okay, see, what you're saying is, in a perfect world, you would end, like, every version of WoW and make it WoW 2. Yeah, good luck. Like, check out RuneScape 2. See how that did. Like in a perfect world, yes. I just don't think it would work. Yeah. But, yeah, the argument that I generally make is WoW 2 is retail. Yeah, that's generally the argument I've made in the past. And I think it's pretty true, right? Like, retail has changed so much since WoW. We have WoW 1, which is Classic Era, and we have WoW 2, which is retail. And you can kind of take your pick, right? We quite literally are playing WoW 2. Like, we have it at this point. We already have WoW 2, right? It's basically completely new graphics, completely new systems, completely new class overhauls, complete new everything. Like, we're playing it, right? We should only have Era and retail. I've kind of said that for a long time, you know. I think having one WoW is the best case, but at this point you can't, because the player base is too divided. So I think having 2 WoWs makes the most sense. If you can't have one, having 2, where you have like Classic and you have retail. And the best Classic is probably Era, right? And it's like, if you're gonna have a third, I think Wrath would probably be that third. It's a tough conversation, because no matter what you say, someone's gonna be pissed, because it's like, well, my favorite was TBC, well, mine was MOP, well, mine was Legion. It's like, well, dude, like, you know, if you don't want fragmented player base, then yeah. If I had to have only one WoW, which WoW would I keep? I would keep Classic Era. If I could play one WoW for the rest of my life, it would be Classic Era. Like, I have said this before, but like in 20 years from now, I would love to like level up a mage AoE grinding as like a way to decompress and relax. You know what I mean? Just chill out and just AoE grind a mage. You know, do those classic quests. Like that would be like Arena. I would be fine not playing Arena. Like if I could have one WoW, it would be Classic Era. Yep. Forever. But obviously, yeah. Has anything recently been more hyped than the hardcore PvP tournament? Bro, the hardcore PvP tournament probably had more viewers than any other WoW tourney since it actually might have been the highest viewed, one of the highest viewed WoW tourneys of all time. I didn't even think about that. I don't know. I would have to look at the statistics and ask tips out from OTK.